So, back again, continuing the habit. That said, today is the same day as the last episode, so I might be a little bit more tired, maybe a little bit worn out. Maybe this isn't something I'm going to do. Maybe I'm gonna scrap the whole thing. But I'm gonna give it a good effort to see if we can get some work done, and I can plan ahead a little bit instead of having to read literally every single day, and actually make some progress here. Because the next chapter, after yesterday's amusing, or earlier today for me, yesterday's amusing episode about poetry, where we got a load of examples of poetry with the firm insistence that it was not poetry. Today we deal with the chapter titled The Ants. A Meccan surah, which takes its title from the ants mentioned in the Solomon story, verses 18-19. It both opens and closes by describing the Qur'an as joyful news for the believers and a warning for others. It gives stories of past prophets and the destruction of the communities that disbelieved in them. Illustrations are given of the nature of God's power, contrasted with the total lack of power of the partners they worship beside him, and descriptions are given of the day of judgment for those who deny it. Actually, this is an unusual moment. I'm going to take some time here to dispute this kind of description here. So I think actually the last sentence here, the last partial sentence is the interesting. Descriptions are given of the day of judgment for those who deny it, and this is often how we persuade other people. Like if I'm going to tell you something is true, and like you disputing what I'm saying, usually what I'll do is I'll present a lot of details, all of the details I can recall, and the more details I can recall, the more confident you can be in my position. But that's not how logic works. That's not how evidence works. That's how we persuade other people, but that's not how we prove things. So already I'm a little bit worried here that we're just going to get another list of stories and another list of stories about, oh, all of the people who disbelieved, they are now punished, they now regret their decision, and oh, if only they had believed, they would have been so much better off. When in fact, that shouldn't be convincing to anyone, because you can say the same of everything. Like, if only you had accepted that Odin, the All-Father, then you would have been prepared for Ragnarok, and then you would have fought together for the forces of good, right? We can all claim that they would have regretted it if they didn't, but nobody has come forth and said they regret not believing before the day of judgment, because they don't come back after the day of judgment, or at least, I understand the day of judgment is an event in history as it is described, rather than simply the judgment of the individual, which presumably happens after death. But nobody's come back from after death and said, actually, I wish I had believed. That would have been proof of this. Or at least evidence. Proof is probably a strong word. It would have been evidence. So, I don't know. And also illustrations are given of the nature of God's power, which is interesting, a phrasing, because it sort of describes, it's more useful than the past chapter. It just gives example, like, it just tells you, this is true, this is true, this is an example of a true thing. See, an example of another true thing. This is also another true thing. And it just sort of berates you with an insistence that these are all true things. And if you only obey, believe in God and obey me, that's the insistence we get continuously throughout all of the Quran, but specifically the last chapter. So, yeah, and contrasted with the lack of power for the partners they worship. I mean, I have as much proof of the power of God as I have of any of the pagan beliefs. I have as much proof that it is the God of the Quran as I have that Odin is the one true God to follow. So, what can I say if all the proof, all the evidence is assertions of itself? But oh well. Today we have Tasin, not even the M. These are the verses of the Quran. The M was from yesterday. I'm very curious. I assume there's like been various. Uh, this is a weird tangent, but I assume that much like all of the other religions, there's been various. Like Newton famously spent so much time reading through the Bible to try and predict the future and figure out reality. And it's like I'm assuming that so much work has been poured into these letters, and presumably a lot of it very esoteric and mystical. But anyway, these are the verses of the Quran, a scripture which makes things clear. I wish. A guide and joyful news for the believers. That's actually true. It's this is a weirdly telling statement. It's actually yes, exactly. It's good for those who already believe. It's not persuasive for anyone else. It has no elements in it that are like that logically lead to any conclusions. It simply asserts itself. And so if you already believe, if you think that this is the book, then you read it and you're like, "Oh, I am comforted." And in fact, I was thinking about this. I did a walk after the last reading, and I was thinking, the Quran is uh, less a guide, less a path towards God than it is a profession of faith. It's a declaration. I believe. This is what I believe. It's not so much saying this is what you should believe, this is why you should believe it, this is what is good. It's simply saying I believe this and saying it louder and louder and clearer and clearer. So it's very clear that this is what he believes. It's not very clear that this is some like what God believes. Who is God? We're gaining very little insight into who God is and what he wants from us. We're simply getting insight into what Muhammad thought and what he believed and what he wanted to be true. And yeah, maybe getting a lot of followers is what proves it for you, but I've seen a lot of followers of different religions. And if we're gonna go by tally, I'm not sure that a democratic vote on truth is probably not the best way to go about it. But let's see. These are a scripture that makes things clear, a guide and joyful news for the believers who keep up the prayer, pay the prescribed alms, and believe firmly in the life to come. As for those who do not believe in the life to come, we have made their deeds seem alluring to them, so they wander blindly. Yeah, God makes us sin and then punishes us for our sin. Not great. It is they who will have the worst suffering and be the ones to lose most in the life to come. You prophets are like, just let's stress this. We have made their deeds seem alluring to them, and it is they who will have the worst suffering. God specifically makes me an atheist and then says, and you will be punished because you didn't do as I tell you. What an awful thing to believe. But great if you already believe it. Like it's a comfort for those who already believe in God. It's like you will be rewarded for this faith. Thank you for believing in me. Like it's in that sense it makes sense, but it's in the sense of a book for people to come closer to God. It's not actually that. It's a book for people who already perceive themselves as close to God to be comforted that they are in fact close to God. It's propaganda is too strong of a word. It's sort of a reaffirmation, like confirmation. It proves to those who already believes. It's confirmation of their own beliefs rather than a proof of their beliefs. You, prophet, receive the Quran from one who is all-wise, all-knowing. And truth by assertion, always. Moses said to his family, I have seen the fire. I will bring you news from there or a burning stick for you to warm yourselves. When he reached the fire, a voice called, Blessed is the person near this fire and those around it. May God be exalted, the Lord of the worlds. Moses, I am God, the mighty and the wise. Throw down your staff. But when he saw it moving like a snake, he turned and fled. Moses, do not be afraid. The messengers need have no fear in my presence. I am truly most forgiving and merciful to those who do wrong, and then replace their evil with good. Put your hand inside your cloak, and it will come out white but unharmed. These are among the 9 signs you will show the Pharaoh and his people. They have really gone too far. They have truly been a rebellious people. I like this phrasing more. It's good modernization. I like modernizing. They've gone too far. But when our enlightening signs came to them, they said, "This is clearly just sorcery." They denied them in their wickedness and their pride, even though their souls acknowledged them as true. See how they spread corruption. See how those who spread corruption met their end. Um, it's yeah, we're just repeating. Like, this is probably why I shouldn't read it, because like, what more can I say about this than what I've already said? Like, insisting that they knew it was true, and actually they always knew, and they just denied it for some reason. Like, you're not exploring any of this, not detailing any of this. All of the things that are most clearly detailed are see the punishment. It's very like it's a rhetoric which is just about sort of inspiring fear in people. Isn't that isn't that an awful thing to sort of be proud of? Isn't that something you'd like want to kind of tone down a little bit and sort of clarify and make better? This is you have an opportunity here to explore what they mean by this is just sorcery, and why they thought that, and how they this their line of reasoning faltered, and instead you have an opportunity here to teach critical thinking, and instead we go, well, actually they knew the truth, but they were just spreading corruption. They were just evil. They were just wrongdoers, and were just denying it, but even though they knew it was true. And it's like, no, they didn't. Have some empathy for the people who disagree with you. Like this is one of the reasons why it's so horrifying. There is no empathy in this book. There's only a demand for obedience, a demand for empathy, a demand for respect, but none shown to anyone else. Belittling everyone else's religion, insulting everyone else's religion, being critical of everyone else's thoughts, but not ever your own. This is what's so horrifying. It's sad, really. Really, I wish some time would be spent in this book, which is presented to be holy. Some time would be spent actually giving us something of substance, rather than fear-mongering about, you'll be sorry when the day comes, and I'm going to show you how sorry you'll be by describing in explicit detail how sorry you'll be, but I'm not going to describe in explicit detail why you think the way you think, why God is the way he is, and how we got the way to where we are. Instead of exploring this, you're going, nuh-uh, you're going to hurt. It's like, it goes back actually to the video I made, the mask off video, where I say talk about this criticism I got, like, you'd never dare to talk to Muslims like this. And it's like, well, of course not. See why? See why? Because this is all we get. All we get is this insistence that, like, things, like, I understand it's not like a literal threat. You're not saying that you're going to do, like, Muhammad here isn't saying that he is going to hurt me, so it's not like technically a threat, but it's like it's attempting to use the God as a threatening agent, to be like, believe what I tell you to believe, or else God will punish you. It is a religion based on fear, based on threatening people into submission. Like, I've described it as an abusive relationship before, and it really feels this way. It really does. It's not positive, not hopeful, not inspiring, but terrifying. That's the only thing we get here. But indeed. So we see how the Pharaoh got their end. They drowned. We remember that from yesterday. We gave knowledge to David and Solomon, and they both said, "Praise be to God who has favored us over many of his believing servants." Solomon succeeded David. He said, "People, we have been taught the speech of birds. We've been given a share of everything. This is clearly a great favor." Been taught the speech of birds. Interesting. I assume singing. Because, like, please enlighten me to the speech of birds. If you can do that, if you can speak to birds right now, you would have some evidence of miracles at least. Been given a share of everything, also not true. And this is clearly or at least this is like, we know this from history. We know that these people did not have a share of everything. There were luxuries and great glories in the Americas that they never knew of. So clearly not. Like, unless you mean like mankind has been given a share of everything. Tragically, of course, God only decides to communicate with us through the Middle East. No, none of the other humans apparently mattered enough, and it was never valuable to give them profits. Like, all of the examples, actually, to insist on this point, all of the examples, especially from the last chapter, is like, they're all from this area. When I was like, maybe the people of the forest are Germans, I know Shuaib, that's probably more local. And he's like, why is God so extremely fixated on North Africa and the Middle East? And so, yes, slightly into Europe. Like, it's like, why? Clearly this, like, it makes sense if it's an invention, because inventions spread like this. They spread through people. Ideas spread like this. They spread through people. But knowledge of God's existence, knowledge of God's love, if this is something we just know in our souls, then all of them should have prophets. All of them should have stories about the people whose messengers were denied to them. But they don't. And the punishment of these messengers. They don't. They either they accepted God, in which case it's weird that they seem to worship other gods, or they didn't accept God and only received punishment when the messengers were like, what, like, are the conquistadors, were they like the messengers of God to the Aztecs? Like, it's a horrifying thought to have. Solomon's hosts of jinn, men, and birds were marshaled in ordered ranks before him. I like that. Host of jinn and men and birds. Interesting. And birds. And when they came to the valley of the ants, one ant said, "Ants, go into your homes in case Solomon and his hosts unwittingly crush you." Solomon smiled broadly at her words and said, "Lord, inspire me to be thankful for the blessings you have granted me and my parents, and to do good deeds that please you. Admit me by your grace into the ranks of your righteous servants." Solomon inspected the birds and said, "Why do I not see the hoopoe? Is he absent? I will punish him severely or kill him unless he brings me a convincing excuse for his absence." That's dangerous. Well, I guess kings aren't necessarily good representatives of good morals. Though, of course, being presented as such is not necessarily a great thing. But the hoopoe did not stay away for long. He came and said, "I have learned something you did not know. I come to you from Sheba with firm news. I found a woman ruling over the people who had been given a share of everything. She has a magnificent throne. But I found that she and her people worship the sun instead of God. Satan has made their deeds seem alluring to them and diverted them from the right path. They cannot find the right path. Should they not worship God? Like, this is also a worthwhile. Let's not actually explore the idea of like missionaries harming people, because will they be punished for never knowing, for never having revelation, for never having? If Solomon never went to them, would they never have been punished? Worth thinking about. Should they not worship God, who brings forth what is hidden in the heavens and earth, and knows both what you people conceal and what you declare? No, probably not. Why is worship valuable? Like, what is the point? Like, this is a rhetorical question, and with all rhetorical questions, you should try and answer. It's a good way to sort of undermine the rhetorical impact of them, to sort of actually explore what they mean, because instead it's just an appeal to thoughtlessness, really. It's like I said last time, I called it an appeal to common sense. It's like, well, don't you all know? Isn't it all obvious? Isn't like it's an appeal to incredulity in the formal sense, but like it's in context of in the context of this, like, should you not worship God? No. What is the value of worship? Good deeds, those I can see the value of. Fairness, those I can see the value of. Worship in and of itself is valueless unless it is also coupled with all of the other things. Indeed, I would argue that even without the worship of God, as long as you do good, like if you can imagine hypothetically people who independently arrived at all of the same conclusions as the Quran does and follows all the laws of God without ever knowing them, I think that would be better. Or clearly, to me, it's like this is a group of people who follow the law. Isn't that more important than singing the praises? Is God that vain? Like, why? What is the purpose of this other than to achieve the goal of following the law? The following of the law is the important thing, the following of the rules. And thus we need to understand why there are rules. And thus this book fails. This is the problem. It does not give us any understanding. It simply asserts the belief. It insists, it declares the belief. It's a sharing. It's like, this is what, here's what, it's like when you go to class and like, this is what I did last summer. This is what this is. This is a sharing of what Muhammad has discovered. When Muhammad has discovered that these things are true, and he tells us all, this is what is true. But he doesn't actually explore it with us. He doesn't teach us like a good teacher would. He simply declares it, because he's not actually a good teacher. He's simply a good speaker, a good declarer. A good leader, perhaps, no doubt, but all of the other things, not so much. I guess maybe that's actually because Jesus probably was a good teacher. Like Muhammad, good leader; Jesus, good teacher; Moses, good leader. I'm not sure if good. No, just good leader. He had this whole angry outburst with the tablets. Abraham, probably good teacher. Like maybe that's what they do. Every other one, the next prophet, he'll be a good teacher again. He is God. There is no other God but Him, the Lord of the mighty throne. Solomon said. So this is like to be like, should they not worship God? He is God. There is no God but Him. It's like that doesn't answer the question that should they worship God. That doesn't explore the answer. That doesn't explore why. That doesn't tell us why. That doesn't say anything but this is true. They should worship Him because it's true that He is the one and true God. That doesn't mean we should worship. I guess it does. It depends on what you mean by worship. What is the definition of worship? But if me saying there are no gods, all gods are bastards, is obviously not worship. But if I then go on to not gamble, not drink, obviously I do all of these things. But if I end up following all the rules while still proclaiming there is no God, then what is the value of worship? Worship is clearly valueless to me, and so in order to actually get there, to get to this idea, should they worship God, you actually have to convince me that you should worship things just because they're the most mighty. Because we're in a pretty sort of contrarian and individualistic society here. We don't worship things or people just because they're powerful. Power is not why we submit. Power is why we do things, because we sort of end up being like, well, this is just the way things are. But it's not why we should do things. It doesn't actually. It ends up being true that we end up doing things because we're forced to, but it's like, imagine if Kim Jong-un tells his people to worship him, which I guess he does to a certain extent. At least his father, worshipping his father. Does that mean it's right to worship him just because he's the most powerful person in all of North Korea? No, obviously not. Like, oh, but there is a more powerful God. And it's like, well, sure, but he's not making his will known there. So why not worship the only one who exerts power? What powers does God have in North Korea? Why does he not wield them? Why does he not show himself? Clearly, the only one who has power is Kim Jong-un. If you're stand in North Korea, faced with Kim Jong-un and all of his soldiers, and he says, well, show me Show me your God. Prove him. Show that he is powerful. Like in much the same way that I think, based on the introduction, this surah will do. Like, show me. Like this surah is going to describe, because I know this because other surahs have done this. They've sort of said, well, the people were asked, like, what power do your idols have? Well, what power does your God have? Their God, the Kim Jong, like the North Korean God, if you'd call it that, the Kim Jong Un, the Kim dynasty's God, he does actually wield power. He commands people and they do it. He has the power of life and death, of starvation and luxury. He has the power to decide how the future of his country works out. And if you go to him proclaiming God, nothing happens. So by the same token, why not believe in Kim Jong-un? A local god. But yes, so after this, Solomon said, so after the what's it called? The bird. I'm just going to call it the bird. After the bird tells him about these people in Sheba who don't worship, who worship the sun, Solomon says, we shall see whether you are telling the truth or lying. Take this letter of mine and deliver it to them. Then withdraw and see what answer they send back. The Queen of Sheba said, Counselors, a gracious letter has been delivered to me. It is from Solomon, and it says, in the name of God, the Lord of mercy, the giver of mercy, do not put yourselves above me and come to me in submission to God. See, it's very much this tool of control again, right? It's like, in the name of God, come to me and in submission to God. Like, it's come to me in submission to God. Serve me because God says so. See how this is a little bit insidious now, maybe? She said, Counselors, give me your counsel in the matter I now face. I only ever decide on matters in your presence. They replied, We possess great force and power in war, but you are in command, so consider what orders to give us. They replied, you are in command, so consider what orders you give us. She said, so yeah, you decide. She said, whenever kings go into a city, they ruin it and humiliate its leaders. That is what they do. But I am going to send them a gift, then see what answer my envoys bring back. Okay, cool. When her envoy came to Solomon, Solomon said, What? Are you offering me wealth? What God has given me is better than what he has given you, though you rejoice in this gift of yours. Solomon, too proud, is like, you're giving me a gift? Well, my stuff is better than your stuff. What a petulant child. You're offering me what? Like she does, like she says, like, he's marching with an army and she's giving gifts, and that is what you do in submission. It seems like Solomon is trying to invent an excuse to invade her. Presumably, like if we imagine this is a real historical event which is being retold from written by the victors, as we like to say, then you have this idea of it seems like Solomon out on the warpath, and he hears that they're worshipping a different god, and he's like, well, I need an excuse to invade them. I'm going to go ahead and say, well, you need to submit to me in the name of God. And then they send him a gift, which is usually what you do if you're like, okay, let's submit. I'm going to pay taxes to you now. That's submission. That's like golden. But for like maybe his soldiers wanted to loot and pillage, so he goes, no, a gift? How dare you? I am more wealthy than you are. And it's like, well, pay your soldiers then. Though you rejoice in this gift of yours. Go back to your people. We shall certainly come upon them with irresistible forces, drive them disgraced and humbled far from their land. See? Excuse for violence. That's what religion is. Then he said, Counselors, which of you can bring me her throne before they come to me in submission? Conquer her before she submits. What a cruel cruel thing. Why is this like you're saying the quiet part out loud? This is supposed to be a secret. What's going on here? A powerful and crafty jinn replied, I will bring it to you before you can even rise from your place. I am strong and trustworthy enough. But one of them who had some knowledge of the scripture said, I will bring it to you in the twinkling of an eye. When Solomon saw it set before him, he said, This is a favor from my Lord, to test whether I am grateful or not. If anyone is grateful, it is for his own good. If anyone is ungrateful, then my Lord is self-sufficient and most generous. So he's, well, that's good at least. He's most generous when you're ungrateful. Good. It is. Okay, I'm going to read the other interpretation as well. I'm curious what this footnote is. Who is the one who had knowledge of scripture? Well, loading, cannot connect. I'm going to give up. I can bring it to you in the blink of an eye. Test whether I'm grateful or whoever is grateful, it is only for their own good. Yeah, it's good to be grateful. I mean, fair enough. Gratitude is nice. It's probably not a very important good, but it's nice. It's a kind thing to do to other people. I don't think God is it's being grateful is something you do because other people are sacrificing something for you. God can do anything. God is literally omnipotent. There is no sacrifice. God does or does not according to his own will, according to his own designs. Gratitude is unnecessary. He's going to do what the right thing is, regardless of whether you're grateful. But a person might only help you if they feel like you are being helped by their actions. So to show them that you're being helped, that another person doesn't know what's going inside your head. God knows what's going on inside your head, and the things you do not declare. But another person doesn't. So other people, you need to display gratitude to communicate to them how you feel inside. But God shouldn't need that. The need for gratitude is completely removed if you already know if that they are grateful. It's sometimes you have friends and you do something nice for them and you don't actually need them to say thank you because you know how much they appreciate it. I'm trying to think of a good example of my own life, but I'm not I don't know. I'm thinking of examples where I've gotten things and I've been on the verge of tears because I didn't realize they knew how happy I would be, and I've looked up and I've said thank you a million times, thank you, but I feel like they already knew. I didn't need to say anything. I feel like them seeing me opening this gift or whatever it was and seeing me go misty-eyed was sufficient for them. It felt like it was, at least, even though I did display gratitude again because I wanted to make sure they knew. It's important for me that they know. So gratitude isn't as important as it seems here. And this is important because we're going into the more confusing hint. Whoever is ungrateful, surely my Lord is self-sufficient. He doesn't need your gratitude. Most generous. He gives it to you even if you are ungrateful. He does it regardless. Why does he need your gratitude? So this is true even if you are grateful. Gratitude is an unnecessary thing. Maybe it's communicating exactly what I said. Gratitude is unnecessary for God. Then Solomon said, disguise her throne, and we shall see whether or not she recognizes it. Okay, this is a very fascinating story. I'm going to have to continue reading on. When she arrived, she was asked, is this your throne? She replied, it looks like it. What a great... the Queen of Sheba, I like all of the anti-characters in these books. I just love them. They're so snarky. They're so self-sufficient. They're actually reflective on things. Imagine the scenario here. The King of Solomon has literally made magic happen. It's in a blink of an eye, he's gotten her throne, stolen it from under her before she even realizes. And she comes to him and she sees her throne and is and he says, is this your throne? And it's well, it looks like it, but... And in her mind, she's going but how can that be? My throne is back home. And it's like, good critical thinking, good basic skills, good description, like an honest, genuine human being. It seems like, unlike Solomon, who does not seem like an honest human being at all. Uh, Solomon said, "We were given knowledge before her, and we devoted ourselves to God. She was prevented by what she worshipped instead of God, for she came from a disbelieving people." Yeah, which isn't like, why then is worship important? She came from a disbelieving people. And why then didn't God reveal himself to all of these disbelieving people? And the answer seems to be, well, he did actually. They all knew it deep in their hearts. And it's like, we have no reason to believe this. Why should I accept this? You can only believe this if you already, like, in order to justify your belief. It's like everything is secondary to this belief. Nothing builds it towards belief. Everything comes from belief. You start out by having blind faith that this authoritarian character is demanding your faith, and you have blind faith in it, and it's like, then everything else I believe comes from that. And I genuinely think that the character you have blind faith to can only be yourself. It can only be your own creation. You have made your own God. And that makes perfect sense if you look at how distributed God is. Like, if God was an invention, then it spread just like any other invention. Then it was said to her, "Enter the hall." But when she saw it, she thought it was a deep pool of water, and bared her legs. Solomon explained, "It is just a hall paved with glass." And she said, "My lord, I've wronged myself. I devote myself with Solomon to God, the Lord of worlds." I mean, that would be very cool, especially if you know how hard it is to make, like, really good glass. Would be very, very fancy. I guess this is like Solomon being like, "I'm so rich, anything you give to me, nothing. I have a hall made of glass. Get wrecked." To the people of Thamud, we sent their brother Salih, saying, "Worship." Well, is that it? Solomon showed her. Yeah, this is the story of Solomon conquering people. That's what we see here. To the people of Thamud, we sent their brother Salih, saying, "Worship God alone." But they split into two rival factions. Salih said, "My people, why do you rush to bring forward what is bad rather than good? Why do you not ask forgiveness of God so you may be given mercy?" Like, one of these weird sentences, you just flip it around and like, I say to you, Salih, why do you rush to bring forward what is bad rather than good? Why do you not ask forgiveness of the actual real God so that you may be given actual real mercy by the actual real God? It's like, it's just a he said, she said situation. It's like, nuh-uh, yeah-uh, nuh-uh, yeah-uh. It's like, give me something of value to work with here, please. This is getting boring. They said, "We see you and your followers as an evil omen." Yeah. He replied, "God will decide on any omen you may see. You people are being put to the test." Ditto. There were 9 men in the city who spread corruption in the land without making amends. Okay? They said, "Swear by God, we shall attack this man and his household in the night, then say to his next of kin, we do not witness to the destruction of the household, we are telling the truth." Okay? So these 9 people, evil people, I bet, like, prediction, everyone is going to be punished because of these 9 people. And well, actually, they supported them. Deep down in their hearts, there was corruption, and they were allowing corruption. Like, if that's an argument, then own up to ISIS. Own up to Iran. Like, own up to these people who are saying, we are the followers of God. We are the true worshippers of God. Our God is the true God. And they're claiming this with citations from the same holy book in the same Arabic. If Salih's people are made to answer for these 9 evil men, surely all the Muslims must be made to answer for all of the evil that has been done in the name of their God. I'm thinking, like, should I explore here what I'm being made to answer for? I mean, obviously I'm arguing that it is ridiculous to make people answer to this. And that's why it's like, this book is telling you to do something which is obviously ridiculous to you, so why would you ask someone else to accept that it's not ridiculous? Like, is it only ridiculous when you have to do it? Are there different rules for you and for everyone else? Like, well, if you accept that I'm right, then you can do what, like, you have completely different rules. Like, murder is wrong unless you agree with me, in which case murder is actually perfectly acceptable. Like, it doesn't make any sense. It's not consistent. It's not reasonable. It's not persuasive, and it's certainly not. And it fails on the fallacy of special pleading. Like, you're demanding special treatment. That's unreasonable. So they devised their evil plan, but we too made a plan for which they were unaware. Now this is my favorite bits. When God is being like a mischievous trickster god, it's like, you have made plans. I think I will do something about that. That's a fun god, an interesting god. See how their scheming ended. We destroyed them utterly, along with all their people. Called it. Did I not call it? For some reason, their guilt is spread to their people, but never the other way around. Like, isn't this completely evil? Like, isn't any god who would actually do this just destroy everyone because of 9 evil men? Maybe maybe there were only 12 people in this village, and 9 was actually a significant fraction of them, like, or at least 12 men, because they were all men. Like, maybe this is like a significant fraction of all the men in the village, and so it's like, well, we kind of a little bit overzealous, maybe, but still, even then, like, the sins of the father should not be transferred to the son. It seems like God is an asshole. Like, it seems like God is a bit psychotic, really. As a result of their evil deeds, their homes are desolate ruins. There truly is a sign in this for those who know. Oh, it doesn't continue like we thought it would. Okay, as a result of their evil deeds, their homes are in desolate ruins. So again, the sign is vivid descriptions of punishment. That's the sign. That's the proof. Vividly describing punishment. That's the proof. Like, you read Ragnarok, read Snorre Saga, and you'll like, that is as much proof as this is. But we saved those who believed and were mindful of God. Okay. So not all of the people, only those people, like, a lot also called it, like, actually they were all evil because they didn't believe in God. We also sent Lot to his people and he said to them, how can you commit this outrage with your eyes wide open? How can you lust after men instead of women? What fools you are. This is also a better attitude to have, by the way. Like, being disagreeing with people and feeling like I understand that homophobia isn't great, but it's like, I understand that it's very clearly enshrined into your faith, but like, if people want to be fools, let them be fools. Their prerogative. And indeed, if people who you love and you cherish and who believe like you do, or profess to believe like you do, let them be fools too. Let them interpret faith differently. It is their actions we judge them on. The laws of men are to prohibit and constrain how people behave in society. God can do his own judgments on these kinds of moralities which have nothing to do with, which basically are just like, it goes back to this whole gambling and alcohol thing. Like, when you read this, it's like, oh, that makes sense. We're getting guidance here on, like, this is stupid. You shouldn't do stupid things. Please don't be stupid. That's fair enough. But it's like, if we then start to codify these into laws, like, what are you saying there? You're saying that you are taking upon the role of God. You're taking upon the role of judging things that God is supposed to judge. What a horribly, horribly arrogant thing to say. What more proof that God is made in your own image? What more proof that this is simply an excuse to do things to other people, to exert power onto other people? The only answer his people gave was to say, Expel Lot's followers from your town. These men mean to stay chaste. I mean, I don't exactly agree with that either. I think that Lot also deserves to have free speech, but I mean, this is honestly better than what happens to the city. We saved him and his family, except for his wife. We made her stay behind. We brought that rain down upon them, down on them. How dreadful that rain was for those who had been warned. I love rain, by the way. I know it's gonna be like evil rain, but like knowing the story of Sodom and Gomorrah, knowing the story of Lot, knowing the story of the total destruction of the city, this isn't an unreasonable thing to do. It's much better to leave the city. Like expelling someone, bad, but less bad than destroying a city because they wouldn't do what you told them to. Like, freedom is important, it's valuable. And the right to make mistakes is valuable. Like this life, like we're saying, this life is fleeting, these pleasures are fleeting. This is something that has been insisted on and on and on and on and on again. And yet, for some reason, acting upon it is also justified and presented as though it's vindicated. Like, no, just let them live their lives, let them explore themselves, let them eventually die, and then, like, why not at least give them another 30 years of sodomy before because they're gonna get punished anyway. Let them do this, be fools on their own time. It's their time. Our time on earth is our time. This is owned by me. My time, my own, my life, my rules. I get to decide how I spend my life. And this is how it should be. And God can decide whatever happens afterwards. Feel free. But having him intervene like this is clearly showing that God is a cruel, vindictive. Or it's just a tool for social control. Or this is just a story meant for the people to be scared into doing what they're told by people who have power over them. It makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? Say, prophet, praise be to God and peace on the servants. Peace on the servants he has chosen. Who is better, God or those who they set up as partners with him? Who's better, Kim Jong-un or God? Like, do you have anything recently you've done? Can you show me? Can you do anything? Can God do anything for me? Like the mailman is more powerful than God. I have proof that the mailman does things. He brings me mail, right? And he's pretty bad at it sometimes. But like this idea is absurd. Like who is more powerful? Like who is better? Like this conception of God, this figment of your imagination, or the real thing? Who has more power? Well, the real thing has more power. Only by what you ascribe to him, what deeds you ascribe to this figment of your imagination, that's where the power comes from. That's where you believe his strength lies, is by saying, well, actually he does have all of these powers, by insisting upon his powers. Well, I have seen no evidence to suggest that he has any power, apart from convincing people to do what they say. And you know what? Quite a lot of humans have exerted the same power. Who created the heavens and the earth? No idea. Who sends down water from the sky from you, with which we cause gardens of delight to grow? No idea. You have no power to make the trees grow in them, do you? Can you do it? Show me. Is it another god besides God? No, it's probably not a god at all. No. Ah, great. Great. But they are people who take others to be equal to God. Yeah. Or better even. Better than a thought form, an idea, something that only exists in mind and not in matter. Who is it that made the earth a stable place to live? No one. Who made the rivers flow through it? No one. Who set immovable mountains on it and created a barrier between fresh and salt water? Not actually the case, fun fact. Brackish water is unless you mean like the barrier being the earth, like the separation is because of evaporation. Like actually the sun makes a barrier between fresh and salt water. Is the sun God all of a sudden? I thought we were just told it wasn't. Is it another God besides God? No, I agree. Again, we agree. But most of them do not know. Again, we agree. Who is it that answers the distressed when they call upon him? No one. God does not answer. Try it. You can go outside, be as distressed as you'd like. God does not answer, unless you go with the joke: two boats and a helicopter. Like unless you really ascribe a lot of creativity and imagination. Uh, it seems like very much overactive imagination is the explanation for all of this, and the anthropomorphizing of things that don't need to be anthropomorphized. Why does it have to be a who? Can't it be what? Can't it be the laws of nature? Like we have four fundamental forces we've studied quite well. These four fundamental forces can explain all of the things we see in the nature and reality. Like the mountains, the trees, the birds and the bees, the sun setting and rising, the moon orbiting, all of these things can be explained by mechanics and electromagnetism and all of these different laws. The sun shines because of nuclear energy, right? We can understand these, and these things don't have to be whos. These laws of nature are. If you want to, you can say that somebody must have invented them, but why? Why ascribe a who? Why does there have to be a who? Why are we so self-obsessed that there has to be some sort of version of ourselves, some sort of human character, and not just impersonal reality? Uncaring, unflinching, cold, impersonal Mother Nature. Why do we have to anthropomorphize it so? Why does it not simply have to be as it is? Unthinking, unfeeling, unflinching in the face of everything. Why does there have to be someone who answers when you are distressed and you call upon someone and you call for help? Who removes their suffering? Does he? Probably not. Who makes you successors on the earth? You do. You humans, we do. We did that. We can be proud of that. Take some credit for actually conquering the fucking planet. We are no other animal can do what we do, except the bacteria that lives in our guts. Maybe they have a head start. Maybe they're better off than us because they cultivate us like livestock. But other than that, we conquered it. Is it another god besides God? Nope. Little notice you take. Who is it that guides you through the darkness on land and sea? Stars? Who sends the winds as heralds of good news before his mercy? Oh, goodness. Never seen a hurricane, I guess. Is it another god besides God? God is far above the partners they put beside him. Well, prove it. Who is it that creates life and reproduces it? Show it to me. Who is it that gives you provision from the heaven and the earth? Is it another god besides God? Say, show me your evidence then, if you... Yes, that's what I've been saying all of this time. We do have evidence of all the things I've been saying, of all the forces of nature. Like, we've been studying them very long. Like, all of the mechanisms are very well understood at this point. Like, we are getting to the... Like, there are limits to our understanding, obviously. But we have more evidence for gravity and nuclear power and, like, all of these things than we do for God. So the power of humans is much more evidenced than God. Like, I don't have time to show you all the evidence. Like, what do you mean, show me your evidence? Like, I've seen no evidence from your assertion that God is that there is a who. I have no reason to believe there is a who has made something. All I can see is evidence for what has made things. A thing that has made things. Rules that have made things. Like, relationships that have made things. Like, actions and reactions have made things. I have not seen a who in any of this. Nowhere in science, nowhere in splitting apart the atom, Nowhere in, like none of the quarks say made by God. Like nowhere in this whole thing is there any evidence for any who. Nowhere is there any handiwork, any signatures, any indications beyond supposition and imagination. Fantasies, all of it. So show me your evidence indeed, if what you say is true. Show me evidence that God has done anything ever. Ever. Like, this isn't evidence. A man wrote this. We know a man wrote this. We know a man dictated it. It says so. Like, we know a man wrote this because that's what you all agreed on. Like, like it was written down after the oral tradition. We know a man dictated it. He claims he dictated it from God, but we don't know that. Only he knows that. Muhammad probably has good faith. Muhammad probably has evidence. We don't have that evidence. Why should we believe him? If indeed evidence is necessary, why don't we get any evidence? This is like this tricky thing of shifting the burden of proof. Well, actually, you prove that I'm wrong. You're telling me that there's a magical sky daddy who's controlling everything, who made everything? Why should I believe that? There is absolutely no need. I have no use for that hypothesis. There's nowhere in my philosophy did I come up to a point where I have to say, well, I give up. Now I guess it's time to believe in God. They're simply unnecessary. Say, no one in the heavens or on earth knows the unseen except God. They do not know when they will be raised from the dead. Neither do you. Like you say, God knows it, but I don't know that God knows it. Like I have, again, show me your evidence. No one knows the heavens or the earth except, no one in the heavens or the earth knows the unseen except God. Like, why God? Why do you believe God knows it? Say that. Tell me why. Tell me why does God know it? Why is there anyone who knows it? Is there anyone who knows it? As far as I can tell, there is no one who knows it. No one, neither in heaven, nor on earth, nor God, nor any figment of our imagination, nor any creation of ourselves, nor any being beyond ourselves. No one knows the unseen. I have no reason to believe the otherwise. Their knowledge cannot comprehend the hereafter. They are in doubt about it. They are blind to it. Doubt and blindness being equated again, very tricky, cheeky even. Their knowledge cannot comprehend the hereafter. Yes, you're too ignorant to understand. You're just too stupid. It's like I mean, I shouldn't poke too much on this. It's kind of what I did. Kind of what I'm moving past at this point. But it's like, why? Like, or I know why. I know why you say this. And if I have to explain to you that this is what a liar would do, like somebody trying to lie to you, this is what they do. They say, well, actually, the reason you don't agree with me is you're just stupid. And actually, your doubt is just blindness. You're not actually being clever by doubting. You're just being stupid and blind. It's like, oh, okay, sure, that's true. Fine, I accept it. Now explain to me. Now show it. Now enlighten me. And it's like, well, I can't because you're too stupid and blind to ever see it. And it's like, then go away. Then shut up about it. Keep it at home. Don't tell anyone else that you said this because clearly we're too stupid to understand. And unless perhaps it is stupidity to accept things simply because you are told. It is stupidity to accept things because your parents have told you, because you grew up in a society where it was proclaimed to be true, where it was taught to you. As is told in the book. The book itself describes this stupidity. But only for other people. Well, I said this a lot yesterday, and so I haven't said it yet today. What the usefulness here is in using the Qur'an to criticize itself. If you actually use these arguments to critically examine the book itself, you get much better results. You can explore philosophy and poetry and understanding reality in a different way. You don't need to, it's like the Quran is giving you all of the critical thinking tools, but you're deciding to only use them to like for confirmation bias. You're getting all of these critical thinking tools, but you only use them to support the things you already believe. That's not really critical thinking, then, is it? It's just self-confidence. That's all of this book gives us. So the disbelievers say, "What? When we and our forefathers have become dust, shall we be brought back to life again? We have heard such promises before, and so did our forefathers. These are just ancient fables." You can just say that. Prophets say, "Travel through the earth and see how the evildoers ended up." Travel through the earth and see. How do I do that? Can you give me directions? Maybe tell me which shoes to wear? How, like, will I need a coat, or is it warm? Shorts and t-shirt, or trousers and jacket? Prophet, do not grieve over them. Do not be distressed by their schemes. They also say, "When will this promise be fulfilled?" Like, again, it's good if you're a good book for comforting yourself, for reassuring yourself that you are definitely on the right path. A good book if you have created God in your own image, and it's only a way to justify your confirmation bias. Not so great if you want to actually do something smart. They also, I should probably not read several chapters at once, because I am testy as all hell here. I am really, my patience has ended. I can feel me being snarkier by the second, more and more disappointed. They also say, "When will this promise be fulfilled if what you say is true? Say, maybe some of what you seek to hasten is near at hand." Well, actually, maybe you're about to find out how much God punishes the people who are wrong. And that's, by the way, what they're claiming. Like, you're being punished for being wrong about God, for disbelieving what we're telling you. For being wrong about God, the punishment is the same as being evil. This is equivalent. Being wrong about God, that's an evil. Murder someone, that's evil. That's just as evil as being wrong about God. Like, torture people, just as wrong as being wrong about God. Like, how much evil would someone have to commit before you recognize that it's obviously more evil to do actions than to have wrong thoughts, not thinking what you're told to think? How much do you have to work to see that? Your Lord is bountiful to people, though most of them are ungrateful. He knows everything their hearts conceal and everything they reveal. Yeah, fair enough. There is nothing hidden in the heavens or on earth that is not in a clear record. Capitalized, presuming that God knows, but nobody else knows. Though, to be fair, in a deterministic universe, you can determine literally everything about the universe from the current state. If you know everything, you can know everything. If you know everything that is currently true, you can know everything that has ever been true. And also that everything that ever will be true, unless the universe is probabilistic, which is something I'm tempted to believe. I think that that's an interpretation of quantum mechanics, which I think is probably legit. That in fact you can't know anything. That is, probabilistically everything falls apart. You can only know the things you know right now. But that's a real digression. Truly this, but it does sort of correspond with this idea of a record. Maybe this is just asserting that the universe is deterministic. Truly this Qur'an explains to the children of Israel most of what they differ about, and it is guidance and grace for those who believe. It's only that. This part, it doesn't. Explains to the children of Israel what they most differ about. This kind of does reveal a little bit, though, because the goal is to explain what they differ about. Like, describe things that they already, like, it's only an appeal to people who have already accepted parts of the story. And even, like, people who disagree on other parts of the story, then those it can also maybe appeal to, but it's only that. It's never proof. It's never evidence, except in the form of threat of punishment. Be afraid. That's what this book is telling us. Be afraid of God, or else. Truly your Lord will judge between them in his wisdom. He is the Almighty, the All-Knowing. So, Prophet, put your trust in God. You are on the path of clear truth. You cannot make the dead hear. You cannot make the deaf listen to your call when they turn their backs and leave. You cannot guide the blind out of their error. You cannot make anyone hear you except those who believe in our signs and submit to us. When the verdict is given against them, we shall bring a creature out of the earth, which will tell them that people had no faith in our revelations. So, by the way, you can't. I almost skipped over this. You cannot guide the blind out of their error. You cannot make anyone hear you except those who believe in our signs and submit to us. The only people who will believe are those who believe. The only people who can see evidence are those who believe. Like, why do I have to explain that this is stupid? Genuinely stupid. Also, I'm not just being facetious or brusque or short-tempered. This is clearly thoughtlessness. This is like, well, it's true if it's true. It's true if you already believe it. You can believe it if you already believe it. It's evidence if you already believe it. It's only a comfort. It's only a declaration. It has no informative value except to declare itself. It sounds like Muhammad, the Prophet, is like proclaiming himself, like almost simping for God. Like, oh, see how much I believe. See. Look at me. I'm a good student. I believe. I did what he told me. I'm a believer. See. Look at me. Like, he's begging for rewards from God, like a teacher's pet. That's what it feels like. Or no, that's what it seems. That's the informational value here. It's like the informational value is, I know now what Muhammad believes. Don't know why he believes it. Don't know what evidence he's seen. I don't know why anyone else should believe it. I don't know why anyone else does believe it. I'm more and more perplexed every day. Every time I read something, I'm like, how is it that people believe this? At least other holy books are like nebulous and vague and absurdly if you're listening to like Jordan Peterson, like talking about faith and the sort of the nebulous versions of truth, where the truth of the stories is deeper than the literal truth, and it's like that's what other religions do. But then it makes sense, because like, oh yeah, they've sort of literally confused themselves into a circle. They like literally convinced themselves that there's some sort of deeper, more fundamental truth than the literal, or than truth itself. Something can be more true than true. Is really, really delving into these weird, esoteric, mystical concepts. But here we just have a continuous listing of various logical fallacies, how to criticize people who don't believe what you do, and how to like threaten them with God if they still persist, and sort of how to declare your own faith. That's what we get. It's yeah. What am I supposed to do with this? Where's the lesson? Where's the insight? Where's the philosophy? Apart from if it is all an elaborate scheme by God to make us actually critical of religion. Like, that's the only thing that still makes sense to me at a certain level. It's like, maybe, just maybe, God is like teaching us how to reject what men tell us God says by presenting the argument so poorly. Like, surely if God was actually a good and intelligent being that is trying to convince us to follow his word, like follow the Qur'an, then maybe he would have presented his argument, because the philosophers at the time, the philosophers who had existed for hundreds of years, over almost a millennia at this point, already had the faculties of critical thinking figured out. They could understand, like, I couldn't explain reason. Like the Socratics, they had this in the bag. But apparently God doesn't. Except if God does know, and God isn't trying to convince us, he isn't trying to prove it to us, he isn't trying to show us that this is the true word of God, he's trying to show us that we shouldn't accept that as the end all. Maybe God doesn't want us to believe. Actually, I was going to continue that sentence. Maybe that's it. Maybe God doesn't want us to believe. Maybe that's the point of the Qur'an, to teach us that belief is no longer necessary. So, when the verdict is given to them, we shall bring a creature out of the earth, which will tell them that people had no faith. So I'm just curious. We were talking about this, but who is the them that people will, telling them that we will bring forth a beast, telling them people had no faith in our, like the people themselves? I'm sure they know they have no faith. The day will come when we gather from every community a crowd of those who disbelieved in our signs, and they will be led in separate groups. Until, when they come before him, he will say, "Did you deny my messages without even taking them in? Or what were you doing? What were you doing?" I mean, I am taking them in. This is what this is me. I'm me taking them in and being like, "What the fuck is wrong with you? What is these messages? What is the substance here? There is no substance." Like, I'm taking them in. I'm reading them. I'm interpreting them. I'm thinking about them. I'm clearly very pushing myself to understand them, and I get nothing. Nothing but no substance except using God as a threat. Nothing but a declaration. Like the messages are, or maybe, like I said, maybe the message is, and maybe I'm not the one. Maybe I am the one who's taking them. Maybe the people who aren't taking them in are the people who memorize it and don't think about it. The people who engage with it, who hear it once and then never, and repeat it to themselves, hear it, maybe they even hear it every day, but who never let it penetrate into their grey matter. Maybe those people are denying God's messages more so than I. Maybe, in fact, I'm a better Muslim than you are. Maybe the atheist is following God's wisdom better, because that is just as reasonable as anything else I've gotten here, paradoxical as it is. Just as much evidence of that as I have that Islam is the one true faith. The verdict will be given against them because of their wrongdoing. They will not speak. Will he deny me to speak? Did they not see? So he's asking me a question and then he'll deny me to speak? Or is he assuming that I won't speak? Of all the human beings who have ever existed, I think we can all agree that if there is one fault I have, not speaking is not among them. No, and no matter how wrong I am or how right I am, I will always have something to say. So I'm pretty sure I will have something to say, even to God, even if I'm an idiot. Even if I'm always wrong, even if there is some sort of hidden magical proof here that I was supposed to have noticed, that actually I was just blind to because I'm an ignorant fool. I am, though. But cheers to being stupid. Did they not see? We gave them the night for rest and the day for light. No. Speaking of which, it is currently almost 2 a.m. here. So no, that is definitely not a message I have gotten. Because I'm not a fan of light. I tend to sleep in when there's light. I tend to rest in the light and work in the night. There truly are signs for those who believe, and only for those who believe. On the day the trumpet sounds, everyone in heaven and on earth will be terrified, except such as God wills, and all will come to him in utter humility, except such as God wills. You will see the mountains. Honestly, this is obviously unnecessary, but it's so interesting that this is where it's specified. Actually, it's almost like Muhammad was telling people that, and he looked on their faces, and they looked to each other, and it's like, I don't want to be terrified. That sounds awful. God seems scary. I don't want to have a scary God. I said, oh, no. Except if God doesn't want you to be scary. Like, yes, I see. this mental image of Muhammad being like a almost cold reading, like or like have you seen the guy from Wolf of Wall Street? Like, sell me this pen. This sort of dancing with the audience rhetoric, like seeing reading the mood of the room. That's what it feels like. It feels like a series of lectures where he's sort of testing and exploring and seeing what gets the biggest effect. Like a politician, like a leader. Like, makes sense in historical context. It makes sense if you don't take it as the literal word of God. If you read this book as a political campaign tool instead of as a message from God, then everything makes sense. Everything he says makes perfect sense as a political campaign. Yeah, I don't see any reason to think that it is. Yeah, actually, that will be my position. I think for like all of this philosophy and poetry thing. If this is what you need to prove to me, is that this isn't a political campaign. If you can show me that this isn't just a political, like if you can give me some evidence from the Qur'an or otherwise which shows that this couldn't have possibly been something he said just because as a part of a political campaign, then maybe we have that. Yeah, actually, that would be convincing, because that's the most obvious interpretation here. I think probably God shouldn't be the second most obvious because, again, I've never seen any evidence of anything supernatural, any God of any kind, of any shape or form, of any magical, mystical powers. I've never seen water turned into wine. I've never seen the moon split in two. I've seen the solar eclipse, but I know how that works. It wasn't God, or I mean, unless in the sort of mystical God does everything sense. Like, there wasn't a who did any of these things. There wasn't a who did the eclipse. I haven't seen anything but a political campaign. Anything except a person like trying to convince people to follow him. That's all I've seen. I've seen a lot of evidence of that. A lot of good evidence of that. A lot of good rhetoric. A lot of good tricky things. A lot of things to think about. Maybe a good like most things. It's very useful to analyze, but to blindly follow, to simply accept, to simply say this is true and I know it's true because I know it's true. That's an interesting reading, interesting interpretation of this guy's political campaign. You will see the mountains and think they are firm. Like, actually, let's take a moment on the political campaign. If you read like any politician's campaign, does that prove, like, if they say I'm for the working class, does that mean they are actually for the working class? If Muhammad says I am the messenger of God, does that mean that he actually is the messenger of God? If Muhammad says I have seen the heavens or the moon split, does that mean, or anyone else tells you I have seen the moon split, does that mean that they have actually seen the moon split? People say things all of the time. And they very much stood to gain from exerting his power, from being a leader. That's what he achieved. He united his people, created and founded an empire that lasted, depending on how you count it. You can, like, honestly, its ancestry, like, if you count the Byzantine Empire as the Roman Empire, then you should count the Ottoman Empire as a continuation of the original caliphate. It was a really long-lasting empire, probably one of the longest in history. And so, a very impressive and successful leader. And everything works out in that interpretation. So let's see. On the day of judgment, you will see the mountains and think they are firmly fixed, but they will all float away like clouds. This is the handiwork of God, who has perfected all things. He is fully aware of what you do. Sorry about that. That was a good burp, though. I like the whoop at the end. Whoever comes with a good deed will be rewarded with something better and be secure from the terrors of that day. I mean, okay, if that were true and not just good deed hadn't been consistently equated with belief, with worship, with submission, with obedience, then I would perhaps not be so critical. But again, as a political campaign, if you do good, you'll be rewarded. And I know all of the good you'll do. Muhammad was a good Trump, honestly. Muhammad and Trump, they're cut from the same cloth. I think that will offend Muslims and Trump supporters equally, so I'm very pleased with that one, actually. And be secure from the terrors of that day. But whoever comes with evil deeds will be cast face downwards into the fire. Are you rewarded for anything except what you have done? You will be judged fairly, and I'm the fairest of them all, the fairest that could possibly be, fairer than anyone else. He's such a trumpet. Actually, that's such a good comparison. I'm impressed by myself. Say, prophet, what am I commanded to do? What I am commanded to do is to serve the sustainer of this town, which he has made inviolable. Inviolable? I'm not actually sure how to pronounce it. Inviolable. It's a good word, though. I should use that more. It's very hard to find a situation to use inviolable. Inviolable. Without incapable. Something which should not be violated in this context. Everything belongs to him. I am commanded to be one of those devoted to him. I am commanded to recite the Qur'an. Whoever chooses to follow the right path does so for his own good. Trust, follow me, it's the best thing. We'll make the best America. We'll make America great. We'll make Islam great again. We'll make Muslims powerful again. We'll make the best of the places. Say to whoever deviates from it, I am only here to warn. I'm just saying the truth. Say, praise belongs to God. He will show you his signs so that you will recognize them. Your Lord is never unmindful of what you do. Press X to doubt. This is, I was probably a little bit harsher than I needed to be, but this harshness did lead to the Trump comparison, which I am pleased with, so perhaps not. I'm not sure, actually. Maybe it was nice. We'll see. Maybe I'll record another one immediately after, or maybe I will do it tomorrow and be a little bit more chill, a little bit deep breaths and just a little bit less tired. A little bit, like I'm probably not going to go to bed for another 2 to 3 hours, but still, yeah, maybe that's better. In any case, thank you all for listening. I hope that you got something interesting out of this, and I'm actually looking forward to seeing whether or not there's an answer to this idea of a political campaign, because it feels like a political campaign. This is like campaign speeches 101. And maybe I've read enough campaign stuff I haven't read that much, but I'm curious to see if there's any reason to interpret it as anything other than a person proclaiming, like, how do we know what Trump is saying is a lie, but we're that actually this is the same argument. That which is asserted without evidence can be dismissed without evidence. Whether the person asserting it is Muhammad or Trump or whoever else, or who's the leader now? Jonas Gahr Støre. Whoever it might be, that which is asserted without evidence can equally be dismissed. Thank you. See you tomorrow.